Welcome back to the It's UATL podcast, your guide to Black culture in Atlanta. I'm Naja Parker.
And I'm Deasia Page.
Well, for this week's episode, we will be talking about Black History Month. It's been 11 years since the AJC has put on an effort to tell Black stories, and we'll be talking with our UATL senior reporter, Ernie Suggs, who facilitates that, who heads that up. We're also digging into a specific Black History Month story from Nedra. She worked on this with Ernie, and they combed through thousands of rare images in the AJC photo archives. We'll also tell you about a Black culture obsession that's been living in our minds rent-free. But first, let's get into the rundown on Black culture news in ATL and beyond making headlines. Unfortunately, we do have to start with some sad news today. Jesse Jackson has died, and he was 84 years old, an iconic civil rights leader. I've known about him since
forever.
Yeah, forever, ever. So this has been, a surprise and a somber moment in Atlanta and beyond. Do you remember learning about Jesse Jackson, Deasia, when you were in school?
He was definitely one of those type of people who I felt like, were just always here. Kind of like Stevie Wonder to me in a way.
Yes, that's a good comparison.
Just always here. And I know he's had Parkinson's for almost a decade, although his family did not give a cause of death, but they did say that he died peacefully. What a life.
I know, right?
Lived. When I think about Jesse Jackson, I think about, all the trauma that, he was exposed to throughout his life. And because, to see your, mentor, MLK, be assassinated, right in front of you, that's the type of thing that kind of carries with you throughout your life. So I always think about sort of the mental health of those civil rights activists like Jesse Jackson.
That's such a good point. I could not imagine ever healing from that. And he said something similar. He did an interview with the great Ernie Suggs back in 2018 when Mr. Jackson was in Georgia visiting. And they talked about the moment when MLK was assassinated, and he had gone to the Lorraine Motel, years after that, and he said it was still a wound that had not healed. He said the trauma still felt really fresh. So to your point, I don't know if you get over something like that.
I just always think about, like, where was your heart at? And I'm hoping that he knew that, he was, well loved and respected. And yeah, it is very sad.
Yeah.
So
he was well loved by us. And then, some HBCUs have been shouting him out over the last couple of days or so. I know he got 2 honorary degrees from Clark Atlanta University. He's spoken at Morehouse College several times. So the love is there. I hope he's feeling it from the other side.
But yeah, a life well lived, and, rest in peace.
Yeah, keep hope alive.
Yes, we will. Next on our list, Douglasville's Elena Myers-Taylor has won Winter Olympic gold.
Look at her.
Now, I have not watched the Winter Olympics. Have you?
You're not alone.
I don't think I've ever watched the Winter Olympics, actually.
I think I used to watch the Winter Olympics when I was young because, don't give me the line, that's when they do the ice skating. Right? For the Winter Olympics?
That makes sense.
That feels right.
Winter?
Right. Yeah. So I think I haven't really watched the Winter Olympics since the 90s, but, hearing about Miss Taylor, I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, and this year's Olympics is in Italy, and Miss Taylor, she is a bobsledder. She won gold in the monobob, which I just looked up, actually, and it's a women's only Olympic bobsleigh event where a single athlete pushes, steers, and breaks the sled.
Wow.
I could never do that.
Me neither.
She's a 41-year-old mom of 2, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's said that she's likely the first person from Georgia to win Winter Olympic gold.
Look at her go.
So kudos to her. I always have to shout out the winter athletes because let me tell you, my auntie, she's an avid skier.
Really?
And she's been doing it most of her life. And she's tried to get, me and my mom, into it. But that didn't work out so well.
I was about to say, have y'all tried it?
I've skied with her. I just, winter in sports, don't mesh well. Me and Winter don't go together really well. Like, we really don't.
Is it something about just being in the cold that turns you off?
Yes, being cold. I don't even want to leave my house in the winter, let alone like
be on some skis.
or do any sport or like any type of physical activity outdoors. But kudos to Miss Taylor. That's an incredible feat. And maybe I'll tune in one of these days.
Yeah. Well, have you been tuning in to Mr. Jermaine Cole, J. Cole? He just dropped a new album. Not Lord, you're making me nervous already. J. Cole recently dropped his latest album titled The Fall Off. Yes. And it's a lengthy one. It's like a 2-disc album. It runs about an hour and 40 minutes. It's highly anticipated. He's been teasing this album for several years now. I think he even dropped another album before The Fall Off, and we were like, wait a minute, I thought The Fall Off was the next one, but he I guess needed more time to work on it.
Yes, and also J. Cole was here in Atlanta recently because as the promo for this new album, The Fall Off, he's been doing like this the trunk tour where he's selling like CDs in the back of his trunk. So I know he's been to, of course, like North Carolina A&T, and that's where he's from or whatever. But he also visited Atlanta. He was here at Morehouse. I think he also visited the Dungeon as well.
He did.
And he might have, I think he also had like a listening party that was announced very last minute. So that's why I didn't go to that.
That's okay.
But it was announced like a few hours before it started.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, there were clips going around of him, interacting with students at Morehouse. So nice.
Yeah, I have a friend who works at Spelman. We actually were roommates together at Spelman College, and she works in the counseling department now. Shout out to Frances. And she messaged me like, girl, I missed Jermaine on campus because I could have just sprinted down, and walked across the street to Morehouse for a sighting. But I know if I were a student and Jermaine was on campus, I would have been booking it. It wouldn't be no class. It wouldn't be no extracurricular activity. Finding Mr. Jermaine on campus would be the extracurricular
Yeah, because they were kind of
activity.
these like impromptu, meetups. So it was like, if you know, if you saw him, you saw him. If you didn't, then I guess you kind of missed out. But I'm glad that he kind of, it wasn't just that stop at Morehouse. He did the Dungeon, and then he did a listening party later that night. So
yeah, I love that for him because it's like, I appreciate him wanting to see all different sides of Atlanta. Seems like he wanted to pay homage to the Dungeon family by visiting and seeing where Outkast, Rico Wade, Goody Mob, where they made the magic. He was asking all kinds of questions because he's been releasing videos about his trunk tour on YouTube as well. And so he was asking all the questions, still soaking up knowledge about Atlanta's rap scene. And I can appreciate that.
Because I forgot we do have a J. Cole fan in you, Naja.
I have so many. I call him Jermaine if you can't tell by now.
Lord.
We on a first name basis, even though he don't know it.
Hey.
But I've been a fan of J. Cole since probably 2011. I was 21 years old when I discovered his music, and at that time, he had dropped the mixtape Friday Night Lights, and honey, I was hooked. And I've been a fan ever since. I have seen him in concert quite a few times. I would have to count it and give you an update, but it's probably about 10 times I've seen Jermaine in concert, and I've met him.
Ooh.
I know, right?
Well, maybe he might know you.
No, I don't know about all that. But I met him at least 3 times. One was in the airport randomly in 2011. So he was very low key. He didn't have as much hype as he does now. So he didn't have like I guess that's really similar because he hasn't had an entourage with the trunk tour. He keeps a low entourage, which he's maintained through all these years. But I spotted him in the airport. We ended up on the same flight to Memphis. And, I was trying not to freak out. No, I don't think he was in first class or nothing like that. I mean, he was.
Oh, okay.
He hadn't even released his first studio album yet. I don't think he had done any major tours yet. Okay. So he was just probably still doing the college scene. But after we landed, I went back up to him like a creep. And I was like, are you staying in Memphis? Because I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing any concerts while you're here. And he was like, no, it's a connecting flight. I was like, okay. Have a nice day. But I got stories for days about Jermaine.
I love it. So what do you think about this new album?
Man, I've only listened twice. I noticed that as I get older, I don't have time to rush to the internet or rush to listen to an album like I used to. So I've only listened twice and I'm still processing. There are some standout records for me so far, and I feel like it'll continue to, age for me. But the storytelling is on point. I've always liked Jermaine for his gift of telling stories from a different perspectives. Some of it is like a little more slow pace than I expected, and it is longer than I expected because I do appreciate like a 40, 50-minute album and I can move on. That's probably why I've only listened to it twice because I know I got to make the time. Mm-hmm. But, as our music expert guru, have you listened? And if so, what do you think?
I have. Listen, this album is 24 tracks. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. Like, what do you... For context, I'm not the biggest J. Cole fan. Sometimes he comes off extremely self-aware to me, which is a good trait, but sometimes that can come off as like being self-absorbed. Like for example, like maybe 2 years ago when he was at the Dreamville Fest, and that was like after he did that diss track against Kendrick Lamar. And then he reneged during the show, and he said something like, "This doesn't agree with my spirit" or something. I'm just like, sorry. Like, why? Why would you put out a diss track, which honestly wasn't like really filled with a lot of facts, but stand on that, and then like saying, "Oh, this isn't my spirit." Like,
it just doesn't always land. And even though he is one of my favorites, he is not above criticism for literally everything you listed. He does have a reputation for being kind of preachy. So, I get it.
But I will acknowledge he is among, the best lyricists in the game. I've always acknowledged that. And he has a very dedicated fan base.
He does.
That will always rock with him. And he will also be going on tour.
I saw that.
He'll be in Atlanta, I think in June. I think for 2 nights, actually. So...
And you already know what I'm about to ask you, girl. If you happen to do a review and you need a +1, I am your girl.
Yes, we'll see. But I know you'll be there regardless. And maybe I will too. Okay. We'll see.
All right, Jermaine, you're in our thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into our main segment today. In honor of the final week of Black History Month, first, we're going to have a conversation with our coworker, Ernie Suggs, about why this Black History Month, which is in its 100th year, matters so much. And then we're going to get into a special Black History Month story co-written by Nedra Roan. She's also our co-host. It is a project on the photo archives from the AJC. And that piece is called Atlanta in Black and White, A Century of Becoming.
Today, our colleague, Ernie Suggs, is here with us, and he's been leading the AJC's annual Black History Month coverage for over a decade. Ernie, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
My favorite time of the year.
Tell us why. Like, why did you first start covering Black history here at the AJC?
Well, I've been at the paper since 1997. I've always covered race and culture. Every year they would say, hey, what do you have? Since I cover race and culture, what do you have for Black History Month? That was always kind of the standard question in January. So at that point, I said, hey, why don't we do something every day? Why don't we have a story every day for Black History Month? Because we're in the quote unquote Black Mecca. So that's kind of how the idea came across. And, I proposed it and they say, okay, fine. And it was kind of interesting because that first year I wrote every story.
Ooh, what?
Every story each day.
So 28 stories.
Every story, yeah.
Sometimes 29.
Yeah, sometimes 29.
How many words were there in these stories?
They were short.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little
what
better.
type of stories? Were
one of the things about the Black History Month series that we do here at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution is that I never want to do typical Black History Month stories. So there's never going to be a story about Rosa Parks. And I love Rosa Parks. But it's never going to be a story. But it's never going to be a straight story about who Martin Luther King Jr. was. So that first year, they were, none of the stories are more than 10 inches. And they were just kind of about the Negro Leagues and what the history of Black History Month was. Carter G. Woodson. We did a story about some Black nuns from the turn of the last century. So it was just these interesting, weird stories that I was finding. But by the second year, I probably wrote half of the stories. But then by the third year, everybody on staff wanted to be a part of this. And I think that's the great part of this whole Black History Month series is that not only are most of the writers involved, but all the editors are behind it. Now that we've had this expansive staff in terms of how we think about coverage, videos involved, audio's involved, marketing is involved. So everybody is involved in trying to get this out and trying to make it a very, very good product.
I love the idea that it's a moment for reporters to engage with writing and other, because it's been photojournalism too, different methods of creativity that they may not have been able to engage with.
Yeah.
Usually in their jobs. Yeah. And so, speaking of stories, what are some of your favorite?
Again, they've been stories that have been kind of off the beaten path about themes. So, we did stories about tragic mulattoes. We've done stories about.
There's so many you're drawing a blank.
I know, but yeah, in terms of everything has just been so different, so diverse.
What's your favorite story that you wrote?
The favorite story that I've written. Oh my God.
The one that he wrote with Naja Parker about Atlanta's influence across the world.
And that was
of course.
I'm kidding.
No, actually, but that was a really, really good.
He's like, that was a good one.
That was a good story because it also kind of launched a lot of things that we do now and a lot of ways that we cover Black culture now in terms of this whole Black Mecca aspect. So that was kind of one of the first stories that the paper did that kind of recognized Atlanta as kind of a Black Mecca.
You don't have a favorite that you wrote without Naja?
All my stories are so good.
Okay. That's what it is.
That's why you can't give me too much.
Yeah, all my stories are so good, so I don't know.
Well, Ernie, I like what you're saying about giving the reporters autonomy to choose their own story. Mm-hmm. One that comes to mind is a piece I did. I think this might have also been 2020. It was on the Nicholas brothers. Oh. And that was near and dear to me because me and my dad always watch movies together. We connect over television shows and music. And he once said the Nicholas brothers, they're the best dancers of all time. And when we started the Black History Month Project, I'm like, maybe this is an opportunity for me to learn why my dad feels that way. So I wrote about them. And for folks who don't know, the Nicholas brothers, they were brothers. They were dynamic tap dancers. I mean, they were killing it. Yes. Very acrobatic, flipping over each other, leaping, jumping. And they were known for their piece. They had a musical number in the 1943 musical called Stormy Weather. Mm-hmm. And it was unrehearsed, and they did it in one take, and it was fabulous. Yeah. And so I showed that to my dad, and he was proud that I took that on as an assignment because obviously he saw his influence and he knew that I was listening to him. And so that was good.
I still remember the art for that.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah. Yep.
It just features the brothers literally leaping over each other, which is a moment from the musical.
Yeah. One that really stuck out to me that I'm still trying to find right now as I think about it, but I really enjoyed Arvin's photo essay from the Willie Watkins funeral home. Was that maybe a year ago?
That was a year ago,
yeah. And he won some awards for that too, but he did a photo essay about, that historic funeral home and like what grieving looks like, for Black families over the years via this iconic, funeral home in Atlanta. I think that's an example of like different ways of, telling stories and how that series has been sort of like exemplified that over the years.
And your story, I mean,
I was going to ask you which one that you've written
is
your favorite.
Tell us.
What story did I write?
Well, you wrote the story last year about the Dungeon family, the children of the Dungeon family.
Oh my God,
that's a great one.
I did forget about that one. So I wrote that story. I wrote the story about like the next generation of the Dungeon family given Rico Wade's death, in 2024, I believe. But given like what they're sort of like, given this death, like what the Dungeon family, is doing, with their grief and music and the arts and stuff like that. So it was nice to see all of them, come together for that piece. But I would defer to others as my favorites, like Arvin's photo series. But what about you, Nedra? Are you asking all these questions now?
I have two answers. They are recent. One was 2023. I wrote a story about Angelo Herndon, who was a Black communist, and he was not very well known, I think, to the world at large, but he was very instrumental in defeating one of Georgia's insurrection laws. And, at the time, which was back in, was it the 30s, I think? In the 1930s, early 1930s, it was a big deal. It was like international news. But then I was like, how have I never heard of this man? How do I not know anything about him? Why haven't I read about him during Black History Month? So that was one. And I felt like it had a good local tie to, so I really enjoyed that one. And then the other one was, I think I wrote it last year. Let me see. The Black Streaks.
Yes.
And that was one of my favorites. It was all about the Black not motorcycle, what's the word? Cyclists, I guess I'll call it. It was early motorcycles. And there was this group of Black men who built their own bikes because they, couldn't buy bikes. They couldn't walk in and buy the, I can't remember the name of the company at the time, but it was like this popular motorcycle brand. Indian, I think it was one of the early ones.
Yes.
Yeah. And, they couldn't buy them. So they had to take pieces and put their bikes together and then get on the track on their own and race each other because they were banned from the larger racing culture. For the research of it, I had to get magazines from the 1913s, which I had to call a guy in like Florida or something who had
Florida
them.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, he had stockpiled these old magazines, but that was the only way for me to get information about these people because there was nothing published about them. They used these nicknames, so their families didn't always know that they had this person in their family who was famous for a period of time and had done all these, innovative and revolutionary things. So that was a fun.
It must have been fun to really report.
It was.
That one.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important for newsrooms, especially, Atlanta's newsroom, the AJC, to cover, Black History Month?
Black history is American history. And I think that that's very important. And I think that newsrooms like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution or any newsroom across the country, it's important and incumbent upon these newsrooms to kind of reflect what's going on in their community and what has gone on in their community. So I think for a paper like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, in a city like Atlanta that calls itself the Black Mecca, which also claims to be the birthplace of the civil rights movement, I think it's incumbent upon an organization like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to kind of continue to try to tell that story. And I think it's important for us, the four of us who are sitting at this table, to kind of continue to do that. And I think it's incumbent upon us. I think it's part of a duty of us, those of us in the newsroom, because again, a lot of times you talk about if you don't speak up for stuff, it's not going to happen. And 11 years ago, when I said I wanted to do this Black History Month series, if I had not said that, we wouldn't have a Black History Month series. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but
we can do that.
Yeah,
but it's just a matter of fact that I was just like, okay, this is something that we should do. I'm going to do it for the first year. We've continued, and to the paper's credit, and every year I'm like, waiting for them to say, well, do we need 28 stories of Black History Month? And they've always said yes. So I'm kind of still waiting for that.
I feel like there was one year where there were some questions and debate.
I was going to ask, has there been any pushback?
I think there was some debate one year.
Yeah, there was debate one year because again, it was that question that do we need 28 days of stories? And my argument, and there are very smart people at the paper who said, yeah, we do need 28 days of stories. And and it's also kind of a production. It's kind of that kind of inside baseball thing. But what we are doing is we are providing content for the newspaper every day. So we know that on the website every day, and when we had the print product on the front page of the paper every day in February, there's going to be a big story about Black history. Pretty much everyone in the paper who's at the paper right now has probably done something over the last 11 years for Black History Month.
Now, you've mentioned so many moments in history already. Are there any specific Atlanta moments in history that resonate nationally?
Yeah, of course. Well, if you read the first story for the series this year that talked about we looked at the 100 years of Black history and we picked one moment for each year in Atlanta that has stood out. But in that same story, I picked out 5 years that changed Atlanta's trajectory, that changed who we are as a city of Atlanta. So those 5 years are 1961, when Charlene Hunter Galt integrated and Hamilton Holmes integrated University of Georgia, and Atlanta Public Schools were integrated in 1961. 1968, when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. 1973 and 1974, when Maynard Jackson was elected mayor, and Hank Aaron hit
Maynard for president.
Yeah, exactly. And Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run. 1994, when Outkast dropped their first album, and 2020, when C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, and Joe Lowry died in the middle of COVID, in the middle of the George Floyd situation. So those 5 years. In 1929, when Martin Luther King Jr. was born, 1964, when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Those are kind of big years that kind of resonated from Atlanta nationally, I think. So I think those are kind of like some of those kind of touchstone moments that can help say that Atlanta has always played a role in shaping America's Black culture.
Do you feel like that also has been part of why we think of Atlanta as the Black Mecca? It's like these moments that
I do. I mean, I think that, you can't just say Atlanta's a Black Mecca and just say it. You got to have some kind of proof. And I think that if you look at the 100 years of Black History Month, right? If you look at, Atlanta between 1926 and 2026, and just look at what we've done, what we've accomplished. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in 1929, 3 years after Black History Week was founded. But if you look at these last 100 years, and if you look at the progress of Black America, it runs right through Atlanta. It runs right through Martin Luther King Jr. up until, Andre 3000 and Keisha Lance Bottoms and, all the stuff that happened in 2020, all the stuff that's happening now. So there's so much going on here in Atlanta. There's so much culturally going on.
Honestly, I feel like you can go back to Reconstruction there if you wanted to,
Yeah, we can. But, since we're looking at the last 100 years.
Start at the beginning.
Since we're going over the last, and you've written a lot about the Reconstruction.
I have, But I mean, to me, that was a big deal of really sharing with people that it was 7 men, mostly clergy from Atlanta, who established the concept of 40 acres and a mule, right? Yeah. And like really setting the standard for not just Black people in Atlanta, but Black people in America. So.
Yeah. You and I, and Nedra, we're old enough to remember.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
You older than me.
But, in the I grew up in the 1970s, so it was still the first Black person to do stuff in the 1970s, and still now.
I was going to say that still happens now.
Yeah. I was at a college campus the other day, and they were talking about still first generation Black college students in 2026. And when I was in college, and I was a Black college student in the 1980s, they were talking about first generation Black college students. So that history is always something there.
Yeah, it's interesting because thinking that how it wasn't really like officially recognized until 1976. I wonder, like, for you and. Maybe for you. Like, what was it like in school? Like,
what was it like back in the ancient times? What was that like in the dark ages?
I'm just curious because I didn't really know it wasn't like officially recognized until later.
Now, I mean, I think I've told you all this story before. A lot of what I learned about Black history was either my parents, talking to me about it, sharing things with me, and it was Ebony Jr. And that was, I would get it every month and I would, read my magazine. And they really, that was their purpose, was to spread, an understanding of Black history to young people. So that was a large part of how I learned things.
And that's great. And I, both of us grew up in the North. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And I think that, my mother was the same way. She gave me and my brother an indoctrination in Black history. And you talk about Ebony Jr. And I remember Jet Magazine. You remember they had like this date in history. And one of the things that I always remember was in August of every year, they had the picture of the 4 little girls who were killed in the Birmingham bombing. And that just always kind of stuck with me, just kind of like, picking up Jet Magazine and Ebony Jr. and Ebony as our entryway into Black history, because it wasn't being taught in classroom. All we knew about was Martin Luther King Jr. and slavery. And that was it.
And maybe Rosa Parks.
And Rosa Parks, and that was it.
Right.
And I don't know if that's much different from now what I learned when I was growing up in school. I'm from Memphis, and every February we would be at the Civil Rights Museum touring the facility and seeing the balcony where Dr. King was shot. And we would also do this Underground Railroad tour. So we always learned about slavery, MLK, Rosa Parks, and I feel like it wasn't until I was older.
And Harriet Tubman.
And Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, I was Harriet Tubman in the play.
See?
Oh, you were Harriet Tubman.
Did you audition for that role, or were you appointed to that role?
I think I was appointed, but I did go to an all-Black. So it wasn't like they were singling me out.
I was Sojourner Truth.
Ooh,
That's the other name I was going to say, Sojourner Truth. That was the other one that everyone,
But to y'all's point, like we have these, a short-ish list of people that we mention every year, but our series really takes a deeper look at these little-known facts and moments in history, which is my favorite part about it, because we do need 28 stories. I learn something new every single year.
Yeah. Ernie, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about Black history, either in Atlanta or more broadly?
I think it's part of that conversation we're just having, that it's static,
That no one knows it.
that no one knows it, that no one really understands the full breadth of what we've contributed to this country. And I think that's even much more important now in 2026 with all the attacks on DEI, with all the narratives changing about how we cover or how we understand the history of this country. You know, I was over at the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site a couple of weeks ago. That site is unique in the sense that it's still a national park, but it's still so directly devoted to Martin Luther King Jr. But other national parks are pulling back their Black history. They're pulling back their information about slavery. They're pulling back their information about how Black people helped build this country. There is a retreat of Black history that we're witnessing in real time right now. So I think this series is important. Black history is important. What we're doing and saying as a newspaper and as a country should be important right now, because right now we're probably at a worse time in terms of Black history than we were in 1926.
Yeah.
Because it's all being pulled back, and it's being pulled back systemically and methodically, and it's happening right under our noses.
Yeah. One of the things I'm always curious about when we talk about history is how it shifts and how it changes, because, you know, I think we tend to think of history as something that is very static and doesn't change. It happened in the past and it's over. But I think that as we learn more about people or places or events, it does change what we think about history. So I'm wondering, what do you feel, what qualifies something as Black history? When does it become Black history?
That's an interesting question. That's kind of a deep philosophical question.
I mean, it is. So,
but I think history is what you make of it. It's what you want it to be. You know, sometimes you see posts on social media about, you know, this historic event happened, and you're like, is this really historic? So I think history is
would you care to give any examples?
Did something come to mind, Ernie?
No. But it was just a simple post. I think it was about a couple who wrote a book. They both wrote a book, and someone said, this is a historic moment that, you know, and again, I'm not downplaying the couple writing a book, but, you know, but I think history is kind of what you make of it. And I think history is kind of what you put into it and what you get out of it. That's, like I said, that's a really deep question.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an. What do you think? What do y'all think?
I like to think of it as something that evolves with a deeper understanding and insight, which, you know, we don't always have in the moments. You know, sometimes I think you can look back at an event and say, so, you know, again, example is when I did the column about the Okmulgee Mounds, one of the, a reader sent me a picture that had been in textbooks from 1950 through 1970. And it was the English settlers mowing or plowing the land that was the native people's land and waving to them as they walked on the Trail of Tears. Oh, wow. And the native people were waving back. And I'm like, that ain't how that went down.
Yeah.
But this is what, for, you know, 2 generations of students saw this image, and that's what they learned. And so the teacher who sent it to me is a professor at Kennesaw State. He was like, I use this at the beginning of my class to show my students how history changes and how we should let it change. So
when we're living in the moment, we don't understand it immediately. You know, they say journalism is the first draft of history. You know, so I think we were writing about a lot of...
Who said that?
That's on your face.
Somebody said it.
I mean, it depends on the journalism.
So I think that, you know, as journalists, and as we're living in this moment, you know, 10 years from now, we're going to look at things differently than what we're seeing now. So I think it takes some time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here again, Ernie.
Well, thank you. You're going to have me next year?
Maybe. I mean, we have you every year, right?
Like once a year.
Once a year.
My birthday is in March, so my birthday is
We'll have
coming
you back
up.
on your birthday.
My fellow Pisces brother.
Yes. So please have me back. I got a lot of stuff to talk about for March 18th. Mm-hmm. I'll be having some parties. I'll be looking for gifts.
I don't think this is what I advertise.
And we'll be right back. Okay, so now let's talk about Nedra's Black History Project.
So for Black History Month, UATL senior reporter Ernie Suggs and I have been working on a photo archive project that shares the stories behind AJC images of Black life in Atlanta. And these photos date from 1930 all the way through the 1980s. Some of the images were published or distributed in other formats, and some of them have never been seen. So we thought it would be interesting to look at older images and discover pieces of Black history in Atlanta that have been forgotten or lost.
I love this idea so much. So you got to take us from the beginning. How did you all even choose the photos?
Yeah, well, so it was a process. There were thousands of photos in the archives, and we worked with our archivist, Allison Shane. And once we got like the big group of photos, we had to sit down, blow them up on a screen, and kind of thumb through them and see what were actually good photos. That was kind of the starting point, because there's no point in telling a story about a photo that's not really that fun to look at. So we were both thinking about what the photo looks like, and then what's the story behind the photo.
And what prompted you all to even explore this idea? Because it's pretty unique. I've never really seen a newsroom done this in terms of photos. I've seen like newsrooms go back in terms of like evaluating what they've written in the past in terms of like previous like articles, but never this type of examination for photos. So tell me sort of what,
Yeah.
inspired you all to pursue this.
So we both had the idea independently of each other. It was funny because Ernie had gone to talk to Allison, and then when I went to talk to her, she was like, I just talked to Ernie about this. And I was like, what? So,
Great minds.
So that's how we ended up working on it together. But for me, the idea was really, when you think about some of the Black magazines and publications like Ebony or Jet, many Black newspapers in the country, they always were very, for me, that was the resource for Black people to see Black life, maybe outside of where they lived or things like that. And I wondered, what did a newspaper, a mainstream newspaper, cover? What did that look like in 1930? What were we taking pictures of in the Black community? And, it wasn't a great answer, because we weren't going into people's homes. We weren't looking at their lives. We were taking pictures of trauma or, incidents, crime, things like that, all sorts of things like that. So that's a lot of what we found in the early years.
And in terms of how you all determined, how do you not know like the photos weren't published that came from the archive you were looking at?
So yeah, that's the thing. So we can't be 100% sure that they weren't published because the way that they tracked photos back in the day was not great. So there's nothing that said this was published or this wasn't. Sometimes there's not even a caption on the photos.
Wow.
A lot of the, people that were in the photos are not identified. I mean, it's all over the place. So the way that we thought about it, I think, is not so much that it was not published, but that it's something that people haven't seen a lot of or haven't seen in a long time, or, maybe it was distributed outside of the AJC, so it could have appeared on a website. There are a lot of websites that show archival photos now. So you may see some of these on there, but it wasn't necessarily in the AJC. So there's a little loose definition of that.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned that some of the photos didn't even have a caption or barely had one. So how did you all, do the research to kind of make your own caption for these photos?
Yeah. So some of them you could, even if it didn't have a name, you knew the time period that it was from. So, for example, there was an image of a tobacco farmer. I will never figure out what his name was, but I could look at the date on the photo, which was 1946, and I went back and I researched what was happening tobacco farming in 1946 in Georgia. And I figured out that there was the CIO was starting to develop unions. And that's probably why we were photographing tobacco farmers. Because
The CIO?
I knew you were going to ask me.
Yeah, because
Let me.
I'm not
give me one
that
sec.
educated.
Please educate us.
Give me 1 second. I was like, maybe they won't notice that
We
I'm
all aren't
using-
historians
Right,
like
here we
you,
go.
you and Ernie.
It was the Congress of Industrial Organizations was coming into the South, and they had a movement called Operation Dixie, where they were trying to unionize tobacco farmers.
Gotcha.
So that is probably why we had a photo of this tobacco farmer in 1946. I mean, newspapers did cover things like agriculture and harvesting, but I'm thinking because of the year that that's probably why we were taking pictures of that man. So we don't know who he is, but I'm guessing that he was a tobacco farmer in South Georgia.
Right.
Yeah.
Any photo in particular kind of, strike you as you were doing this research?
My other favorite was a photo of a woman wearing this hat. And she had it sort of, it was tilted on the side as this blue dome on top. And it had its grid marks on this. You couldn't tell it was blue because it's black and white, but I learned later that it was a blue hat. And I did not know when I'm looking at it, I just thought it was a model wearing this cool hat. That was actually the milliner who designed the hat. Her name is Lillian Head, and she was born in Beaufort, Georgia, has this amazing story of how she became a milliner. And at first she was hired as a maid at a retail shop, and then the woman realized that she actually had some skills and promoted her to milliner. So she started creating these amazing creative hats, often that were, kind of whimsical or based on something cool. And that one was, of course, the Polaris restaurant in the Hyatt Regency that rotates. And she decided to make a hat based on that. But just, learning that this was this woman who, lived in Atlanta, had studied design, and kind of fought her way to the forefront, was promoted by the Mary McLeod Bethune in New York City. I mean, just like I'm saying, like such interesting stories start coming out of it when you start digging into the photos.
I could see how you could go down many rabbit holes.
So many.
And just looking through these.
Too many.
And I really love this one too. She looks like, she would have been in Ebony magazine or
Yes.
probably wearing some fashion fair makeup or something like that.
That's what it reminded me of. That's probably what drew me to it. But then just realizing that she was the person, because like I said, I thought it was a random model, but then no, it was the designer who was wearing her
Rocking
hat.
her own stuff,
Yeah.
man.
I love it. And I love the smile, like her smile in this photo.
Yeah.
Too.
So you all had a minute to look at some of these too. Did you have any that stood out to you?
Two photos that really caught my attention were some scenes from, I guess, two separate like Miss Dogwood pageants. And now the Dogwood Festival is one of the largest, or I guess longest running arts festivals in Georgia, I believe, and it's still going. And it started around the Great Depression. And I guess they used to have a pageant for this festival. And so one photo shows a very young white girl crowning a black girl as, I guess, the Miss Junior, Dogwood or whatever. And then another one is sort of an more adult pageant where you also see another white woman crowning another black woman as Miss Dogwood, which kind of signals to me that these two were the first, black Miss Dogwoods in their respective, pageants.
That you are exactly right, actually. They were.
Okay.
What?
Yes. So 1975 was the first black Little Miss Dogwood, and 1977 was the first black Miss Dogwood. Now, I have not yet found Little Miss Dogwood, but I did find Miss Dogwood.
Okay.
And she was right under my nose. Her name is Billie Joe Rucker. And with women, it's kind of hard to trace them because you can get married, your name changes, whatever. So I couldn't find anyone under that name. I ended up searching just online. A Facebook post popped up from 2018 from the high school that she attended in Louisville, Kentucky. And someone else was looking for her, one of her old classmates. That person got a response from someone else who said, well, I don't know where she is, but you might try Percy, who's her sister. So she put the full name of this person, right? I took that name, found Percy, called Percy and said, hey, I'm looking for your sister. And she said, oh, her name is BJ Arnett. She's a professor at Clark Atlanta University.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, what? So
Oh my
I was able to call her
goodness.
up and we had a nice chat and she thought it was hilarious that I found her.
Oh, I love that.
What did she remember about that moment?
Yeah. She remembered that it was a time in Atlanta when things were changing rapidly. Everyone was kind of excited. The story that she told me was so funny about how she ended up even entering. So she had modeled at home and came to Atlanta to go to design school. One of her good friends was the Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune.
Okay.
They used to pal around together in Atlanta. And Billie did a little too much palling around. Yeah. And she was like, my grades tanked.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Having a good old time.
And she was embarrassed and she didn't want her parents to be mad at her. So she entered the Miss Dogwood Festival to win the $10,000 scholarship money.
Oh my gosh.
And she did.
Good strategy.
Wow.
She was thinking.
Yes, she totally threw them off the trip. They couldn't be mad after that.
I
So,
love that.
so she won. She got the money. She's able to stay in school, get things right. She begged the staff not to report her grades to her parents.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, she was funny.
I love a woman who's resourceful.
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great story. She had a lot of good stories.
And what about you, Naja?
Some of the pictures that stood out to me were the ones of Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what she was up to at Spelman during that time, but there is a photo of her in these box braids that kind of fall a little bit below her shoulders. There's another picture where she has a short do when she's in front of Sisters Chapel, which is Spelman's church on campus.
I don't know the story behind that particular photo.
But she looks like she's up to something for sure.
Yes.
She's on a
She's
mission.
planning. She's
Yeah,
planning.
maybe some good trouble or something like that. Who
Right.
knows?
Something like that.
All right, before we let y'all go, we want to introduce y'all to our new segment, Rent Free, where we talk about a Black culture story taking up mental real estate for us. And this week's Rent Free is the America's Next Top Model docuseries on Netflix, I think it's titled Reality Check.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all over social media at the moment. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was this like reality TV reckoning with America's Next Top Model, obviously the model competition series hosted by Tyra Banks that was very popular in the early aughts. So yeah, a few years ago, there was like I think this happened when the series was on Netflix, I think, maybe.
Okay.
And so it was introduced to like a new generation, and people started kind of talking about all the, for lack of a better word, shitty ways that they treated the contestants on the show. And Tyra Banks especially got a lot of flack, very much so justified in how, often demeaning she was to the people on this show. Obviously, there's that viral moment with her when she's talking to Tiffany, one of the contestants.
Oh,
like,
my
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I mean,
and I'm like, girl, why are you yelling?
So many
First of all-
memes and gifs about that through the years. It won't die.
Yes. And now we have this new Netflix docuseries, Reality Check. It's 3 episodes, and Tyra Banks is actually in it, along with her co-judges, Jay Manuel, Miss J, who I love, and who's that other guy, Nigel Barker?
Nigel Barker. He was a
Yes.
judge and photographer.
Yes. So yeah, they're all in it, along with a lot of the contestants on the show.
And Ken Mock, who was
yes.
I don't know, what was his official title like?
I think he was the producer of it.
Yeah. Yep, executive producer.
Yeah, and so what did we watch? Did you watch?
We did watch. I did watch. And honestly, when I saw the trailer, I was a little surprised that Tyra was going to participate in it, because up until that moment, we've seen the social media chatter. We've seen people, make tweets about past behaviors, bringing up old clips, even on TikTok and just all the things. And she's addressed some stuff sparingly. I think she even addressed something at one of Essen's events. She got an award.
Oh, Black Woman in Hollywood, I believe.
Yeah. I think she got an award for something, and she used that as a moment to address all the criticism. So I thought that was all we would hear from her. But yeah, I watched this documentary, and honestly, Deasia, it was worse than I thought, okay? It was worse than I thought. Like, hearing all the behind the scenes, especially about, the first episode, and they talked about one of the contestants. Her name is escaping me. On the show, they portrayed her as somebody who had cheated on her boyfriend.
Shandy.
I think,
yes. Mm-hmm.
The documentary revealed that she was actually sexually assaulted. And that was really heartbreaking, because my 13-year-old eyes wasn't even thinking about sexual assault. And when they asked Tyra about that moment, she didn't really have a whole lot to say. It was almost as if she didn't remember that lady. She didn't remember that incident. She didn't remember the drama around it. And I kind of felt like she was evading responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
And that was annoying to me, because I'm like, well, this is your time to really address this authentically. But she came off a little rehearsed to me.
Yes,
and
definitely.
I feel like she didn't really take her veil down.
Definitely.
She was still on guard. And, I didn't love that. So that, that was just one of the many moments. And then we could talk about Danielle too, the Black girl on the show.
I always thought she was so pretty. She was one of my favorites.
That was another incident where we saw, I don't know, just horrible treatment, horrible behavior. If y'all don't remember, Danielle was a Black woman on the show, and she was from Arkansas. I remember
Little Rock, Arkansas.
It was the first time I remember seeing like a Southern Black girl on the show, and I could relate to that. I'm like, oh, she talked like me. She looked like me. I want her to win. Like, I'm instantly rooting for you. One of the biggest moments in that season, they wanted Danielle to close her gap. She had a gap right in between her middle teeth, and they told her, we need you to, they didn't say this verbatim, but we need you to fit these beauty standards, and having a gap tooth ain't a part of that. So she protested, but she eventually complied. And then this I didn't know because I stopped watching the show by then. Many seasons later, there was a white contestant who had a gap and they widened it.
Right.
So like, which one is it?
Child.
Which one is it?
Child. I have a laundry list of notes, but I was like 3, 4, 5 when the show came out, and I was watching that regularly.
Yeah.
Back in, me and my auntie, we would like sit in front of the TV. That was like appointment television.
Okay.
America's Next Top Model. So much so that I was graduating kindergarten at the time, and they asked me what did I want to be when I grow up.
Ooh, Deasia.
And I said a model. And I said, and when you say model, don't forget America's Next Top before it. So that show really had a huge impact on my child. I no longer want to be a model. Yeah. So that show was sort of a foundational series of my childhood. Even though I probably shouldn't have been watching it. I don't know. It wasn't like a lot of, wasn't like no R-rated stuff on there. But some of the things might have been a bit too mature. But when I'm telling you, I was like glued to the TV every week watching that show, me and my auntie, that was like our thing. I think back then, Tyra Banks represented a lot of hope. And I really respected that at the time. Like I was so like, I guess gullible and easily because I'm like 3, 4, 5. Yeah. But to see this, Black woman really be one of America's Next Top Models and also wanting to find that next one as well, I was really like enthralled by that.
Yeah.
That really like spoke to me. And they got into a lot of that in the first episode of the series, which the series is 3 episodes. And I feel like that was too short.
Yeah. We could have went probably and had a story about every contestant on the show.
Right. I just feel like, because there was like, over 20 seasons?
25 cycles of this.
Oh, Lord.
25.
And so like to just reduce that to 3 episodes.
Or is it 24? 24. Whichever one is right, Isabel. 24.
But you know what? She did announce that there's going to be a new season. I'm like, girl.
And that was annoying too, because I don't know if she thought she ate at the end of episode 3 by teasing another America's Next Top Model. Girl, after this, we never want to watch this show again. What do you mean?
Right.
We're good on it.
Yeah. And that first episode about, Tyra's rise and sort of her inspiration behind doing the show, that to me said that, okay, is this sort of this show sort of a projection, like in terms of how you treated the woman on the show?
Yeah.
Is this a projection in terms of like unhealed trauma because of the way you were treated as a model? Because she said that she created the show to be a fight against the fashion industry. And I felt like maybe she took it too personally to the point where you weren't, like the focus wasn't the well-being of these girls on the show. It was really about you.
Right.
And that's what, to your point about it being like very rehearsed, very performative in terms of her, I guess, explanation of it. Even her explanations of like the Tiffany incident, she kept saying, oh, like, well, the Black girl in me just saw her, giving up and I didn't want her to give up. And it was just so much of like some deep Black girl stuff that really caused me to act this way. I'm like, girl, go see the lady.
Go see the lady. And even that moment wasn't long enough for me. I still wanted more because I'm like, in my mind, this is a tell-all documentary. So tell all the things. Don't just skate past whatever the truth was, because even after the yelling moment, somebody else said Tyra was taken off the set immediately after that scene. So what was edited out? And the times the women did try to stand up for themselves, there would be a threat of being eliminated from the show.
Right.
So you couldn't even speak up for yourself and still have a stake in the competition. You was going home. But maybe that's more commentary on reality TV. A lot of these producers, it doesn't seem like the well-being of the contestants is at the forefront of their mind. They want to have narratives and storylines that keep the audience watching from episode to episode. So the well-being of the people who are on there, that just falls to the wayside.
Mm-hmm. And now they're like, oh, Mona Scott Young, you next? Love and Hip Hop.
It's really who's next, right?
Bad Girls Club next.
So many. I mean, do we need to put Love Island on the list too?
I'm telling you, these reality TV shows are exploitative.
They are.
Just one thing I wanted to mention from the show that really like broke my heart was Miss J. The beloved judge on the show, queer icon, known for teaching models how to walk.
Including Tyra.
Yes. And in 2022, he suffered a stroke. one thing he said that really got to me when he said, I'm known for teaching people how to walk, and now I can't walk.
That was tough.
Yeah, and that really broke my heart.
Yeah.
And he does break down in the documentary. And even him saying Tyra, hasn't called him or anything. I'm like...
And he said not yet, so I don't know. He still sounds like he's very hopeful.
Keep hope alive, honestly.
Yeah, she had a strained relationship with the contestants and the judges who they say they were friends at one point. Well, we hope everybody who's been a part of that show in any way is doing okay. And maybe this documentary was a bit of an outlet, a little cathartic.
Yeah.
But we wish you all well. That's all we have time for today. But until next time, we'll see y'all.
Bye. See y'all.
Thanks for listening to It's UATL. UATL is a source for Black culture and community in Atlanta, powered by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and its supporters. The show is hosted by Nedra Roan, Deasia Page, and me, Naja Parker.
If you liked the episode, be sure to follow us and leave us a rating and review. It really helps. It's UATL wouldn't be possible without our lead producer, Isabel Kirby McGowan, and producer Kara Schillen. Extra support from Ron Williams. Our executive producer is Gavin Godfrey. Megan Nadolski is our senior producer, and Samantha Stamler is the head of audio.
Special thanks to Janelle Davis, the managing editor of UATL for the AJC. Want more UATL? Be sure to join the community at uatl.com. See you next week.